ADHD Rewired, episode 429. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Brian Entler. Brian is an alumni of ADHD Rewired's coaching and accountability groups. He has been a peer mentor or admin of our coaching programs, and he has been working to redesign his life to be ADHD-compatible. Brian will be riding the AIDS Lifecycle this June, a 545-mile ride from San Francisco to LA to raise money for LGBTQ healthcare. An avid cyclist and firm believer in the power of exercise to be an ADHD management tool, he's going to share his experiences in his coaching groups here and goal setting, talk about routine building and how cycling and exercise have played an essential part. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Eric. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you again. I know that we've been talking about having you on for a while. So when you started in the coaching groups, it was 2 years ago?
Yeah, I was season 22.
Okay, so you were in ARC 22. And when you came into as a member, kind of what was going on in your life at that point?
Oh, well, that was an interesting moment in my life because that was during COVID. That was well into COVID, and I was really struggling at that time. I had been living with my ADHD completely unmanaged for a long time, and I was not on meds, and I was kind of not doing well with it. And when COVID came, everyone started working from home, and I started working from home, and I realized so much of my daily routine in life was from external cues. Like I had to be at work at a certain time. I had to look busy. I had to respond to people in my office. And that's what kind of kept me going. When all that was hard stop and it was just me all of a sudden being like almost completely self-directed, I felt like I was in outer space. I lost all sense of reality. And I was like, oh my God, I am unraveling. I was really worried about it. I was struck by like how much I was struggling to keep it together without other people driving me or other events driving me, but without being proactive instead of reactive was a struggle. So I was like, okay, this is the time. I need to figure out what's going on. And I'd been listening to the podcast before, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is the time. Maybe this is the time. I have to do this now because I have the time, and I obviously have an urgent need.
So when you came into the coaching groups, what was it that you were kind of hoping to get out of it?
Oh, I was trying to get my shit together. I had reached this state because of those conditions at time. I had reached the state of me feeling like acutely out of control of my life and acutely incapable. But I'd been living with that mindset for a long time. Like, or many of us, especially ones that live with unmanaged ADHD for a long time, we end up with negative mindsets. Like, we don't trust our abilities. We don't trust our ability to get things done. We're very sensitive because we feel like we have failed 1,000 times before. So that creates a negative mindset where it erodes your self-esteem and we don't want to take on challenges. And I'm speaking for myself. I don't want to speak too broadly. I am speaking from my own experience. I was very much in that mindset.
With that one, I remember when I think it was about a year ago when I talked to Russell Ramsey, and he does a lot of like CBT stuff around ADHD. And he says that sort of lack of trust of self is one of the most like pervasive cognitive distortions that we see with adult ADHD.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And that is me. I'm still working on that, but I have come a long way. And the ALC is part of that.
So one of the reasons we want to have you on, especially right now, is one, because you are doing this cycle. We are recording this in the beginning or middle of May, but this is for Pride Month. That's supposed to be coming out right before June. So we want to be featuring a lot of LGBTQ members in our community. And so do you want to talk about sort of goal setting and how being a part of ARC is sort of, for acronyms, ADHD reWired coaching is what ARC stands for. I translated to goal setting for you, and it led you to be training for this 545-mile ride.
Yeah, goal setting. One of the ways this relates to goal setting is this is a very public accountability goal. And that's one of the tools we use in ARC is like we have accountability buddies. We have people who see us. We can't like just disappear until we can't forget about things and then forget they ever happened and without ever knowing. We learned that public accountability is a really great tool to help ADHD people get on track. And this is the biggest, most public display of accountability I can think of because I'm putting it out on my social media. I'm putting it out to the world. And that actually really was very intimidating. But once I did it, once I pushed the button, like register, and once I made it public, then my perfectionism kicked in. And I'm like, I can't fail in front of everybody I know. So I was kind of positively harnessing perfectionism toward a positive end this time.
Is that perfectionism though? Or is that just like that sort of, I look at it as like that positive social pressure?
Debatable.
Okay.
I think it's what the intent and the emotional place you're coming at from would make a difference. And for me, I think it was perfectionism. It's like, I will not fail publicly. I will not. And that's kind of like what was getting me up at 6 a.m. to go ride before work and to do stuff I didn't think I could do because I need to be ready for this. Also, there's a set end date. A lot of times when people have a big project and it's just something that goes into the future, like I knew exactly when I had to be ready for this. So having that end date and having all the support and the accountability were all things that supported me in that goal.
So you shared with me that you've lost 130 pounds.
Ish. Estimated.
Okay.
Because I don't weigh myself. I have my woo-woo approach to that. I only weigh myself at the doctor. I let go of that. That's just a number and it's not really relevant.
So
that's approximately somewhere in that ballpark.
When did that start?
Oh, that started back in like probably around 2018. I don't know what this, I just got fed up. I just started going to the gym and I realized like I had to do something because I was quite heavy. And I'm treading lightly here because I don't want to make anyone else feel less than because of wherever they are in their journey with their weight loss. But I was struggling because I was starting to have like health problems. My knees and my ankles were starting to weaken and I was having like tendonitis all the time and it was becoming a factor. And I was worried about it because looking forward, I saw, people built like in the same state that weren't much older, walking with canes. And I realized if I walked around, if I kept on long enough, I would do some real physical damage to my joints. And that's a hard spiral to get out of at that point if your mobility is limited. So I really saw like the future unfurling in front of me. And I didn't like the story it was telling me. I didn't want to go down that road. So that is what kind of got me to actually be emotionally motivated to like go to just start doing basic stuff. I used to sneak off to the gym and like do the elliptical at first.
So when did you get into cycling then?
During the pandemic, I used to cycle long ago when I lived in Massachusetts, but during the pandemic, I hadn't for a long time. And during the pandemic, I bought a bicycle off of Craigslist so I could commute to work because I was an essential worker without having to get on the public transportation or anything. And as soon as I bought that bicycle just for simple getting to work, I was like, why did I ever stop cycling? This is great. Because at that time, like the roads were empty and you could just go wherever you wanted without any issues. And I was like, another factor I hadn't even thought of, outdoor time is really great. It's great for everybody, but I think it's great for ADHD people. So
there's a good amount of research that supports that too.
Yeah, I had been exercising a lot before the pandemic, but the only time I was spending outdoors was walking to the gym. Now spending a lot of time outdoors, I started to feel a lot better and be like, I enjoy doing this. Focusing on the process instead of focusing on, I'm going to go to the gym and with the goal of burning X number of calories. I'm just going to go do this thing that I enjoy. And there's the payoff is the experience and how you feel afterwards. The payoff is not, I'm 5% closer to my 2%, my 2 pound a week weight loss goal. Because I don't think that's a really big, I don't think you get a big dopamine hit thinking about it that way, but you do get a big dopamine hit going out and exercising and spending time outdoors.
Absolutely. And when you enjoy the process, when you enjoy what you're doing, on one hand, I could say it makes it easier to do this stuff. I think it's like almost essential when you have ADHD to enjoy what you're doing. It's the thing that allows you to push yourself sometimes too, when you enjoy what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Forcing yourself to do stuff you're doing, it's torturous. I think anyone who's tuning into this podcast knows that is torturous when you have to focus on something you just don't want to do.
So 2018, you started looking at some of your health and looking at exercise. And then in 2020, you started to spiral out of control a bit because of COVID. You joined the coaching groups, wanting to sort of get your life, as you said, get your shit together. Mm-hmm. And so tell us a little bit about some of the things that you really learned from the coaching groups and that you're still kind of using today and how it's affected you today.
Okay, well, we already touched on the bucket list. We mentioned the bucket list goals where we frame, that's a tool from ADHD reWired coaching, where we think about our future goals. Or a lot of people, I think many ADHD people kind of get caught up in the day-to-day and they lose track of their long-term goals. And that combined with the lack of confidence and lack of worthiness that I already described, it's easy to fall into a rut where we're underachieving and just kind of on the little treadmill of life. And I wanted to get out of that. So I used that tool from bucket list goal. Doing the AIDS Lifecycle actually is one of my bucket list goals from season 22. So I'm doing that.
That's so awesome. I just want to congratulate you on that. I think it's so exciting hearing when someone's really actually executing and living out a bucket list goal. So it's just congratulations to you.
Well, absolutely. Thank you. I will accept that. Thank you, Eric. The reason that it was a bucket list goal is because I knew people in other parts of the country probably might be hearing about this for the first time, but this is part of it's based out of here. So it's part of San Francisco culture. Everyone knows somebody who has done this. And I had wanted to do it for a long time, but I would not allow myself to believe I was the kind of person who could do this. I never thought I would I'm too flaky. I'll never get in good enough shape. I'll never stick with it. The fundraising portion was very intimidating to me. I thought I'll never raise enough money and I'll just it could be kind of embarrassing, and asking publicly saying, hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to maybe give me a donation was very intimidating to me. It was the lack of emotional vulnerability behind that. And that's another thing we talk about in ADHD reWired coaching. To make change, to change these patterns that we've fallen into, you need emotional vulnerability. And that was a weak spot for me. So this was I even framed it as okay, I'm going to take this challenge on. I'm going to put myself where I have to finish it. And I'm going to force myself to do this thing that is uncomfortable. This is a tool to help me change a mindset from someone who can't do hard things to someone who can do hard things. And at the time, I'm just saying it out loud now. I'm like, wow, I'm kind of impressed because my mindset at the time was really, that was a change. That was a leap. That was a step up out of my normal routine for me, out of my normal state of being.
Because I know during our, when people express interest in the group and they go through our sort of registration process, one of the things we try to make super clear is if you're not willing to be vulnerable, don't do the group. You'd agree with that. It is the most essential element to really get a lot out of the group.
Absolutely. This came up a couple of times when I was adminning. As you recounted this, some people in the ADHD department are so blown away by how much content there is in the ADHD Wired program. They get a little nervous. They're like, I'm never going to remember this. I'm missing out on everything. And there's so much in there. But if you take one thing away, it's the emotional vulnerability component, because that is the one thing that makes everything else easier. That's the one thing that if you're not really emotional availability, if you're not doing that work to change your mindset and change your ideas about yourself, it's going to make everything else that you try to do less effective. That was the major lesson. I learned that in my mastermind in my season was I chose a very emotionally vulnerable topic. And I realized that if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have gotten as much out of it.
What was your topic?
It was it was analysis process, decision making, and being caught up in that. And you kind of rightly called me out that I think there might be some trauma issues lumped in there, which is some other work I went on to. I took that and went with it after ARC also. And I've also been doing a lot of work around that. So that was very revealing for me. So that emotional vulnerability component cannot be underestimated, in my opinion. Without that, very little else of this is going to work. And I remember from my mastermind, like my mastermind, what do they call it? Like the write-up sheet, the post thing you're supposed to write up, which I never posted. Sorry, I'm in trouble. I never posted it. But I was angry. I was like, I know I came here to learn how to do my calendar and manage my life better. I didn't come here to confront my childhood trauma, but I realized that like you can't separate them. You absolutely cannot.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things that we do see a lot of traumas, and I see people don't even realize that that's part of what it is. And to be just really clear for listeners, we don't directly like address trauma. What we do is we help support people on making those appointments with the therapist to actually do that work. So it's like taking that action. Because I mean, even myself as a trained therapist, how often I would like be in that contemplation phase for months and months and months to go back to therapy before actually doing it. So like once you sort of recognize like, oh, because as we start doing this work, it's like we're all onions. And the more we peel back, we realize, oh, there is still more there that I didn't realize, which is part of the fun and challenge of personal growth work.
Absolutely. And that's what I think I went in with a mindset. I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn how to get my shit together and get organized. And I just never even conceived of the idea that like my emotional and spiritual well-being also had to be put in touch with that. I had never made the connection before, and I made that connection during the program.
So we're going to take a really quick break. I want to let everyone know before we take a break, we're going to put a link to how you can actually contribute to Brian's fundraising goal of, I know he's trying to raise $5,000. And how far away are you right now from that?
I am currently at $3,755 and 17 cents. I don't know
17 cents.
But thank you for your 17 cents. I will accept any amount.
All right, so we will post a link on this episode's show notes so you can help contribute to Brian's cause here as he's setting out on this ride to raise money for LGBTQ healthcare. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our award-winning online coaching and accountability groups over at coachingrewired.com. Our summer season of coaching and accountability groups begin on July 8th, and registration for our summer season of coaching groups has already begun. So if you are ready to grow, then go to coachingrewired.com to join our next summer registration event this Thursday, May 19th at 12 p.m. Central. That's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern.
I decided to join this group because I couldn't be alone anymore.
I decided to join the group because I knew I had to make a change.
Before this group, I thought I had to do this alone or with the support of other neurotypical people around me.
I decided to join this group because I just felt all over the place and was seeking some kind of guidance.
I've never liked the idea for myself of any kind of group coaching or therapy or support groups. I've always figured my difficulties were so severe that I needed the full attention of an individual coach or therapist.
It's been 8 months since I decided to leave my corporate role and make a change. I have been looking for what that change is for a very long time.
What I was trying wasn't working, and my coping mechanisms were failing me over and over. I was exhausted. I just couldn't do it anymore.
I thought in order to grow and make progress, I'd always have to mask and explain to people, what I was struggling with or what I needed help with. I don't feel like I have to do that here. That's been a really big deal.
I realized that I didn't allow myself to sit in my success.
I learned that I work better or more outcomes happen for me if I'm in a social setting, sort of driven by other people's motivations, and even me inspiring others to do more work or improve. It's just a win-win situation.
What I did not expect was how quickly I would be able to open up and feel incredibly close to the people in my group.
What I did not expect was coming away with a group of people that I love and respect so much. I never saw that coming.
I think that group is not about finding the support or the techniques to grind through the tasks and the difficulties that you've had in life, but it's giving you the push to relax into it, to be gentle with yourself, experiment, tweak, laugh, cry, and just like accept and be more open to figuring it out.
My biggest takeaway is that it's okay to be me. It's okay to need support in ways that others don't. And it's okay to celebrate things that I'm proud of, no matter what anyone else thinks.
My biggest takeaway is I have tools to move forward. I can't necessarily change the nature of the way I think, but I can make it work for me, and I can also find ways to bend the world towards me.
What I learned is that with the right support, change is possible.
This group was the catalyst to making the change that I didn't know I needed, but had been longing for a lifetime.
And that's one of my biggest takeaways, I guess, was how much this social aspect of it really is a huge factor for me.
If you're thinking about joining this group, there's really nothing like being with a bunch of ADHDers. We're a really remarkably diverse group of people. I was surprised at how varied everyone was, except for the one thing, which is that we all have ADHD.
If you're thinking about joining this group coaching through ARC has been more beneficial than I possibly could have imagined.
The special gift that each person in our group has touched my life with is a real and tangible acceptance and the belief that I am not alone.
Everyone here has worked so hard, been so courageous, let themselves be vulnerable, let themselves be supported by others, and also just support each other. So I'm proud of all of us.
If you're thinking about joining this group, do it. If you're stuck and you know you need that extra push to help reach your goals but don't know where to start here.
If you want to learn how to prioritize your goals, gain awareness of where you are really spending your time, and learn beside other adults with ADHD who also understand the challenges we face, then go now to coachingrewired.com to join us for our next summer registration event on May 19th at 12 p.m. Central. That's this Thursday, May 19th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Registration is by invitation only, and we would love to have you. Join me or one of ADHD Rewired's fabulous coaches this summer. We have groups starting at 6, 7, 10, 11, and 12 o'clock Pacific. That's 9, 10, 1, 2, and 3 p.m. Eastern. To receive your invitation to our summer registration event this week on May 19th, go now to coachingrewired.com and click on that teal button at the top of the page. There, you'll also find times for each of our sections broken down by time zone. Once you've confirmed your email, you'll receive instructions with everything you'll need to submit before receiving your actual invitation to the registration event. Whether you're new to ADHD Rewired or you've been listening for a while and you've been thinking, maybe for a while now, about joining our award-winning coaching and accountability groups, take the next step, even if it feels scary. Because remember, growth happens outside of our comfort zone. Invest in your growth. Invest in your future. Go to coachingrewired.com to get registered for our next summer registration event this Thursday, May 19th at 12 p.m. Central. That's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you can't make that, or you're hearing this after that event, we have another event on May 26th. Check the website for all future events. Come grow with us and find a community where you belong. That's coachingrewired.com. One more time, that's coachingrewired.com. All right, we are back. So you've been doing a lot of work on yourself, and it's not just fitness work. It's not just the trauma work. Share with us some of the other ways that your kind of life has changed since being part of the coaching groups.
Well, that's a broad question. Yeah, I feel like it's changed a lot of ways. Like, as I've done all this work to like shift my mindset, that just pays dividends in ways that are completely unexpected that you can't anticipate. I feel like my personal relationships have gotten a lot better.
In what ways?
I feel personally like way more open emotionally. I feel like more confident, like sharing things before, because I don't know if you remember when I started the program, like I've rewatched some of those sessions. I'm giving off major serial killer vibes. I didn't really warm up to like it's week 8 because I was very uncomfortable being on Zoom talking about vulnerable stuff. And I've clearly come a long way because at this point, like I won't shut up. I'm just on Zoom all day on the network talking about ADHD stuff.
It's funny you say that, Brian, because I actually, when you said that, I just kind of remember thinking in the beginning of group that like, I'm having a hard time getting a read off this Brian guy.
Yeah, I was very uncomfortable. Like that, I said, coming to that realization that like my feelings about things were, and that's the beauty. One of the great things about it is like it's consistent over time for 10 weeks. Like if you go to a therapist, and this is not therapy, but it's once a week, and then you can forget about it. But when you have to go regularly, because there were times when like I was struggling, I was feeling like emotionally overwhelmed, but I wouldn't let myself not go. I would literally be like, pick your hand up, put it on the mouse, move that mouse over, press join meeting, and just don't not show up. Don't not show up. And some days that was all I had to give, but I did it. And it took some time, but I think like around like week 8 or something, I was like, okay, I was starting to feel a little bit more confident. And all the stuff we do on the ADHD reWired alumni network afterwards is I've continued that work there. Like still part of the reason why I do work on there and engage with people, the alumnus, is because this also helps. We're helping each other. Like I'm not there to like, I guess we can call it volunteer work, but like, I'm not there just to give, but like I'm also receiving because I'm doing something that used to really intimidate me.
I've shared, I think with you before, probably on the podcast, and with a lot of our coaching groups, that like doing this work for myself is one of the best things I do for my own ADHD, because it forces me to be thinking about it all the time. Right? You can't go into sort of autopilot mode and just think that things are going to go okay, because they won't. Like that's part of living with ADHD, is just accepting that like you can't live life on autopilot. Like you will crash and burn if you do that.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was when I was starting the program.
So what was it that was sort of your spark to get more involved in the community, to work as a volunteer admin with us, and then continue on? Now you're leading a weekly group in alumni that's become very popular, helping with monthly goal setting. Yeah,
for those at home who don't know, it's 10 weeks long and it's intensive, but it doesn't really end, or I frame it as the conclusion of the program is an ending, but it's also a beginning. We have a whole online community where alumnus can remain in there, and we do all kinds of cool stuff. The reason I initially wanted to admin was because, like I told you just now, like I felt like it was late in the program, but time to time I really felt like I was loosening up, and I'm like, oh no, I'm finally like kind of getting into this, and it's almost over. And I'm like, oh no, this is the good stuff. I want more. So I signed up to be like an admin, which is for people at home, that is the peer. I like it if the course is a college course and you're the professor, this is like a teaching assistant. That's is the analogy I make. Like we kind of support the people in there. And I found it to be a very rewarding experience because I got a lot from it, and kind of, helping people a little bit along their journey with it is very rewarding to me.
What's it been like sort of seeing other people go through the process?
Oh, I've been an admin twice, and I've seen people kind of blossom and change over even during the program or even after the program and alumni. And it's really nice. It's really nice to see people to know that like people are finding their way a little bit better, and maybe they're still disorganized, but like even if they just feel a little bit better about themselves and they're a little bit more positive, like just that is worth it.
So I know that you spend a lot of time working on your planning, like your daily and weekly planning and your monthly planning. Can you talk a little bit about what your process is?
Well, I am not an expert in planning. I'm still learning. And my process, let's see, rule number 1 is just never stop. Like you have to build up that resilience. You're going to put a planning thing, and then it's going to eventually fall apart. And then you're going to put together a new planning thing, and then that's eventually going to fall apart. And then you're going to do it again and again. But the key is you just have to keep getting back up and not being like, oh, I tried planning once and I blew it off and never do it again. So I'm still struggling. I'm still learning. I'm upfront about that when I host that GPA planning session on alumni, is that like, I'm here to learn. I'm here, like, thank you for joining this session because you are also helping me do this. And that's the number one lesson, is just expect to fail over and over, and learn how to be okay picking yourself up and doing it again. But other than that, accountability, and I approach it as self-care. Like, a lot of people don't want to do planning. They have negative associations around it, so they avoid the negative feelings about it. Just building resilience is the lesson number one, and not being discouraged is lesson number two. And other than that, there's, infinite number of tools and things that people can use, and finding the one that's right for you, and not trying to, if you see like the popular thing, everyone's doing Bujo or everyone's doing
bullet journals, some
other app or whatever app, not jumping into that and thinking if it doesn't work for you, it's because you're not capable of planning. It's just like, that is not the right tool for you. You just keep looking for another tool.
What tools are you using?
I primarily use the Google Docs suite, like the GCal, and I push notifications to my phone. I set reminders on my phone every day. Like, I have a lot of alarms, and I vary the times.
So let me ask you this. So outside of the AIDS ride, what other sort of long-term goals have you been kind of focusing on?
Long-term goals. Going back for years, I kind of was in a bad state. So first I worked on my physical health. Then I started working on my emotional, spiritual health, and the ADHD reWired program was part of that, helped me get me in a better mindset. Now that those are kind of together, I'm looking forward to career change. I've kind of fallen into a career that I find is, okay enough, but it's unsatisfying. And I've decided that's just kind of not good enough. Like we mentioned before, an ADHD person really needs to have a dopamine hit reward system to really stick with something. So I'm trying to redesign my work life into something that is actually rewarding enough that I'm interested in it, that I will pursue it, instead of, I want to pursue the work and not pursue a paycheck.
Yeah.
Although I kind of want both, but yeah.
Right. I mean, not having a paycheck makes life much harder, right? But it's like when we can know that or the stuff we need and some of the stuff we want are that we can have those things, then it's really about fulfillment. And that's the stuff that fuels that intrinsic motivation. Like when we actually internally enjoy what we are doing and we feel that we're getting a lot out of it.
ADHD people can't not have that in a work situation. It is, I know it is slow torture. My first career after college was in investment banking, and
Was it really?
Yeah. Okay, you're a little too surprised, Eric. Yes, I have a degree in economics. That's the thing. And now, so that was an experience for me that was hurtful, because I came from like a kind of upper middle class, working class family that instead, like, you go to college so you can get a job and you can make as much money as possible, because that is what a good person is. And that's what I was raised in. And so I did that. I was capable of doing the work. Nothing was beyond my capabilities intellectually, but just doing it day after day and not being into it, eventually problems started coming up. And it took about 5 years before I got, it felt devastating to me at the time, but now looking back, I realized it was exactly the right thing that had to happen, because I was not going to be able to stick with that career long term. So yeah, I got fired and I felt terrible about it for a long time. So that's what I was, life's too short. You have to, and ADHD people, like, you're not going to be satisfied. You're not going to have a healthy life if you spend 8 hours of your day doing something that you hate. It also reinforces your negative beliefs over and over and over again. Like, it's really hard to break out of that cycle, but it's worth it. You have to do it.
What do you think about that idea that I've seen floating around about, it's not about like discovering your passion, but about creating passion out of what you're doing?
Creating passion out of what you're doing? What does that mean? I mean, just like enjoying what you're actually doing right now, or?
Yeah, I guess it's there's these different ideas about, pursuing your passions. And I was just curious if you had thoughts or have heard about that idea. Because when I've heard that, I'm like, really? Like, are we just trying to like sort of jujitsu our mind into liking something that we don't? Or like,
yeah, but are you convincing yourself that it sounds kind of like, just settle for what you're doing now? And I think you have to be.
I wish everyone could see all the facial expressions that are going on in your face right now. Like, you're contorting and trying to understand, like, how can someone find passion in something they do not like?
Yeah, no, that's you hit the nail on the head. I don't get that at all.
Well, I think that makes two of us. That's why I was sort of asking just a curious question. There was a TED talk about that, like the idea of like, I think it was on, what was it? Part of it was like the multi-passion, now I'm just sharing just enough information to put people on a fruitless internet search.
You're triggering so many YouTube rabbit holes right now, Eric. Okay, actually, I think now that I had a moment to think about it, you know what? I think what there might be describing is more of a mindfulness-based approach, like more of a Zen thing. Where like, okay, you're in this situation and you can't change your situation immediately. You might hate your job, but like you need this job for at least some period of time. You're not going to quit tomorrow. Basically making peace with the fact that you're going to live in that space for a while. And I definitely see a value in that, because that is something else. I forgot, I didn't even think of that. That is something else I've been doing in my life after art, was like we incorporate mindfulness upon, which is very hip right now. And it's very big on self-development things all over the YouTube. But I'm sitting here now saying like, oh, I have a meditation practice. I have a spiritual life that I didn't have before. And we've been talking about future me, but I'm thinking about if past me could listen to this podcast from like 3 years ago, they'd be like, who the hell is this talking about like meditation and a spiritual life? So like I've gotten way into that meditation and breath work.
I think that's really incredible. One of the things I really humbled by is that when I do reflect back, and usually when I reflect back, it's like in like 5 and 10 year increments where I'm thinking like, if I had a crystal ball 10 years ago and saw what I was doing right now, I'd be like, I think there's something wrong with this crystal ball. There's no way this is actually happening. And you're talking in just a 2-year span.
Yeah. There you go. That's okay. Yeah. But I think that has occurred to me until last time. Like we talk about, I think it's like a framing tool to think of future me. Like it's a visualization thing. How would you want future you to feel about in a year from now from what you're doing? But I like to think about past me. Past me would be kind of blown away by what I'm doing right now. And that's a good motivator. I take comfort in that.
Let's do this. Let's take one more quick break. And when we come back, I know that there is a goal that you set out to tackle, but that you haven't actually done much with it. So we're going to talk about that when we come back.
Okay.
Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our patrons. If you want to show support and grab some extra perks, then I would love to have you come to Patreon by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And I want to thank Lydia B, Hunter B, and Tristan G, who all became patrons this week. Thank you so much for your support. Perks start at just $5 a month, where you can get ad-free episodes of this show in our patron-only podcast feed, with those ad-free episodes automatically added to your favorite podcast player. Then at $25 a month, you can join me every 4th Tuesday of the month for our patron-only monthly coaching calls. Our next monthly coaching call is on Tuesday, May 24th at 3 p.m. Central. And did you know at $10 a month, you can actually get the audio recording of our monthly coaching calls and ad-free episodes in your own private podcast feed? Then get even more value as a patron with 1 month free on Patreon when you choose to pay for 1 year at a time instead of going month to month. No matter your contribution, I am so grateful for your support. Thank you so much to all of our patrons. If you love this show and you believe in the work that we are doing and you are able to support us financially, then consider becoming a patron by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Thanks, everyone. If you like ADHD Rewired and want to stay up to date with our show notes and weekly episodes, and subscribe to ADHD Rewired by going to ADHDrewired.com/podcast or by hitting the subscribe or follow button in your favorite podcast player. And if you love the show, don't forget to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player if the app allows reviews. While you're there, check out all of our other shows that we have on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network by going to ADHDrewired.com. rewired.com/podcast network. We have ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan, Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb, and ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens. Did you know that you can join me and the rest of the ADHD Rewired team every second Tuesday of the month for our live Q&A? That's every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Discover more from ADHD Rewired by going to ADHDrewired.com. Find this podcast and all of our shows by clicking on the podcast tab at the top of the page and join our monthly live Q&As by clicking on the events tab to register so you can join us every month. That's ADHDrewired.com. Thanks for listening. All right, we are back, and I'm just kind of humored by the look on Brian's face. He's like, "What are you actually talking about right now?"
I had no idea.
Because right before the break, I said that I knew of a goal that you set out to do, but you haven't actually done much with it, and it probably wouldn't be an episode of ADHD Rewired if I didn't mention pickleball at least once.
It's always about the pickleball, isn't it, Eric? Oh my God.
So you bought a pickleball set.
I did buy a pickleball set. It's been sitting in my office for a long time now. And I don't have anyone to play pickleball with, but maybe I should go, as you recommended. People who play pickleball, you can go there and there's some kind of ambassador. Maybe as a emotional vulnerability exercise, I should go to the pickleball court and just do it. Okay.
There is a website, I think, called Places to Play that you can find all the places to play. And it'll have like contact information for the people who are sort of the local area ambassadors.
Wow. Eric is calling me out. I guess I have to right now on the ADHD Rewired podcast, I guess I have to make a public accountability goal. I'm going to play pickleball within the next month. I'll put it on my calendar. I will time block it. And I will, will you be my accountability partner with that, Eric? Can I check in with you on that?
So in the next month, so we're recording this on May 13th. So June 13th. Okay, I'm actually writing this on a piece of paper. And what I know I need to do is actually put that on my calendar because writing it on a piece of paper is a good intention to transfer it to my calendar.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And it is funny, like, the fact that I do this professionally and I still, like, some of these old habits, like, still... it's like, no, I'll remember that. No, I won't.
Oh, no. That's when the CRS kicks in.
Can't remember shit. All right.
Yeah.
So it is Monday, June 13th.
I will. Okay. Well, that'll be like right when I'm getting done with the ride.
Do you want to move it a little bit?
Well, you know what? I'm just going to be bold. Let's move it to before the ride. I'm giving myself 2 weeks.
Whoa. 2 weeks. All right. So that would be, wow, that's exciting. Okay. So, that's the 23rd.
Oh, no, I meant 2 weeks earlier, but basically before June 4th.
Okay, so June. So give me a date.
Now I have to look at my calendar. What day is today? Today's the 12th, the 13th?
Friday the 13th.
31st. By May 31st.
Okay, May 31st.
And I will provide photo evidence. I will put it on the Mighty Network, where our alumni community.
Sweet.
And if anyone from the alumni community that we know wants to join in there and harass me on Telegram to remind me, I welcome the input.
Okay, so Brian, I am also going to send you a calendar invite.
We are using so many tools, Eric. This is great.
It's at Gmail. Do you want that on the podcast or do you want that removed?
Yeah, let's not put my email.
Right.
Well, actually, who's going to email? Go. I don't care.
All right, I sent you that calendar invite.
Oh, I'm so called out right now.
That's super exciting.
And that reminds me, I haven't actually changed the goal on my fundraising thing to 5,000 yet. I'm going to do that at the conclusion of this podcast. See, that's again the emotional resistance. Like I've been saying I'm going to do it all week. Have I actually logged in and done it? No. Is it because it's too hard? No, it's because, I really have to bump it up because I set my initial goal at 3,000 because that's the minimum. That's what you have to raise to be qualified to go. So I think I'll be lucky to make that much. And I'm like, but now I'm at 37.55. And I'm like, no, I'm going to challenge myself and bump it up to the 5,000 before the ride.
So let me ask you this. We have just a couple minutes left here. What are some things that you would like to maybe talk about to help others who might be thinking about joining our coaching program What would be some valuable information, do you think, if even thinking about like if sort of past you could hear future you, what would you want to heard that would have said like, you know what, this is the right time and this is the right program?
My recommendation is if you are interested enough in ADHD to listen to this podcast, then you're here for a reason. There's something missing that you are looking for. And if you're willing to put the time in, if you matter enough to like not be watching TV, not be doing something easy, not be doing something fun, there's something lacking that you are trying to correct. There's something missing that you want to improve. And it's a big leap to jump into a program like this. I know it was for me. I had never done any kind of coaching before. And I was like, oh my God, am I really doing this? And when I hit the send button and I sent my payment, I was like, what are you doing? All I can say now is like, it was the best investment that I could have made with that money. Absolutely worth it. That's coming from someone who was never would have thought that before. Who was like shocked that I was doing that when I did it. And it is an investment of time, energy, and money. And I don't regret it at all. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Investing time, energy, and money yourself is what better use could you have than improving your quality of life? There's no better use of your time, energy, and money than investing in yourself. I feel, and like since then, I've gone on and done all this other kind of coaching, interesting coaching stuff. So it really set me on a different path.
That is awesome. And seriously, congratulations for everything that you've been doing so far and for ongoing continued success. And thank you for being such a valuable member of our community and contributing and leading. It's just been really, really fun watching your growth. So the AIDS ride is June 5th through the 11th, 545 miles. Like, do you ever think of that number and be like, what am I doing?
Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, my perfectionism, I've been training really, really hard. When I finally started like riding around other people, I was like, oh my God, I'm ahead of the curve. I've been training so hard that I'm doing really well, but it's intimidating. I'm like, oh my God, I'm really doing this. Like, it's getting real. It's only a few weeks. It's really only like 3 weeks away. And I'm like,
So I'm going to say their website here, but the link is going to be on our show notes page, www.tofightiv.org/go/Lady Bear 2022. What is Lady Bear?
That is my other name. That is kind of a nickname I use as like my nom de plume. But yeah, that is my drag name from when I'm a classic ADHD person where I jump from thing to thing to thing seeking stimulation. So like I've done so many weird different things in my life. But yeah, I was a drag performer am debatable for many years under that name.
I would I think when we eventually organize the ADHD reWired Wellness Retreat, we're going to play pickleball and have a drag show. So let's do it.
I know who I remember had a certain bucket list goal a few times. Eric Tivers had a bucket list goal where he said he wanted to perform in drag.
Let's do it.
So I'm calling you. I took on the pickleball challenge. I'm going to challenge Eric Tivers to fulfill his bucket list goal.
So maybe the next year, Brian and I will play pickleball while in drag.
Oh, well, okay. That is a big, hairy, audacious goal right there. Fine. Challenge accepted.
All right. Well, we are here at the end. We are out of time. Are there any final thoughts that you want to share with listeners?
I came on here to talk about the AIDS Lifecycle, and I managed to make it a lot about me and about it. But I do want to point out this is a really fine organization. It benefits the San Francisco AIDS Foundation and the Los Angeles LGBT Center. It's not just going to go to like marketing or executive salaries. This provides first-line healthcare for people who need it. And basically, it's not even limited to LGBTQ people. Like anyone can walk in here and get STI testing and medical exams and crucial healthcare to people who won't get it otherwise. These are low-income people who don't have insurance, or don't want to go to their insurance because they don't feel comfortable talking about like issues that like maybe they have a family doctor and they don't want to share it. So these are really great organizations. It will really benefit people. It'll help people live better lives. So that's one reason to support it. And I gratefully thank anybody out there in the world who will click on that button and help me support these organizations.
Well, I am going to try to lead here by example. And when we are done here, I will be making a contribution to your ride. And I wish you the very, very best in everything. And thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story. It's inspiring. And it's really exciting.
Thank you,
so
Eric.
Congratulations.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate you very much for creating all of this.
It has been a pleasure. It has been fun. I'm in here growing with everybody. I always tell people that, like, trust me, I actually don't have all of my shit together.
He does not. He does. Well, he
right?
does not. I promise you. No, none of us do.
Right. And that's the whole idea. It's like we can thrive and be a hot mess all at the same time.
The Hot Mess Express. Let's do it.
Thank you so much, Eric. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHD-rewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all of the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, All of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired, click the button to be a guest at the top of the page, and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.